Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Navigating Trump 2.0. This, of course, is the show that takes a look back at the week that was in Washington, D.C. through the lens of the second Trump administration. And joining me, CBN News chief political analyst David Brody and host of CBN's podcast Quick Start, Dan Andros. Gentlemen, let's get right into what's been going on here in Washington this week. And Congress is back following their summer recess. They took off the month of August and now are back in September and have hit the ground running. We've got a government shutdown possible at the end of the month. We've got lots of legislation that's being kicked around regarding selling stocks by members of Congress. We've got RFK Jr. on the Hill today, Thursday, as we're recording right now. David, what are the top priorities for Congress this month?
Well, where do you begin? Well, why don't we start with a distraction, which of course is Epstein. And I say distraction, I don't want to minimize it. I'm talking about from a political standpoint and from a Trump administration standpoint, and from a Republican Speaker Mike Johnson standpoint, this Epstein file situation just will not go away. We'll get to that obviously later in the show, as we like to say. That's called the deep tease, by the way. Thank you very much. So there's that, and we'll talk about it. But obviously, the big one is the possible government shutdown. And I would call it a probable government shutdown. I think that's where this is headed. There's a lot of reasons for that. First of all, they're not going to pass a budget. Let's get that off the table right now. They've only passed 3 appropriation bills. The Republicans have. So they got to pass 12. The last time 12 were passed were in 1996. So that's what, then the 30 years roughly ago. So that won't happen. And this is what we do. We fund the government through continuing resolutions for the last 30 years. I mean, this is just crazy stuff. And we're going to have another continuing resolution at the end of September, or will we? That's the question that we don't really know at this point. But my sense of it is, my spidey sense, my political spidey sense, tells me that we're in for a shutdown. Typically, there's a shutdown once every 5 years or so. The last one was in 2019, so this is about 6 years. So we're about due for one. Chuck Schumer, as you know, got a lot of flack the last time that he went along with the Trump administration to not shut down the government. My sense is that he won't make that same mistake twice, so he's going to dig in. So you've got that. And then you got Republicans that think that the Democrats will be blamed for any sort of shutdown if it happens. So they just want to clean CR. They just want to continue the resolution, if you will, continue what's already being funded. And that's not going to happen with Democrats. Democrats don't want that. And they're under a lot of pressure, the Democrats are, from their base to make sure that they don't give in to Trump. So I think this is headed for a shutdown.
Yeah, Dan, I would agree with that. I mean, part of what's complicating things, too, is President Trump and the Trump administration went through a Senate rescissions package to Congress, which rescinded billions of dollars in funding. That went through, and they want to last month or 2 months ago, and they want to do another one coming up here. That's going to be another few $1 billion, and that prevents Democrats and Republicans from working together to try and solve some of these appropriations issues. There's a lack of trust, obviously, that goes on when something like that happens. Hey, this money's already been appropriated, it's already been approved, and now it's getting pulled back. How do we know that any deals we agree on now won't be rescinded next year? So I think that kind of leads into it. Do you agree that it looks like we're headed for a shutdown?
Yeah, I mean, it seems possible and potentially even likely. And, and I, as I'm looking at these things, David mentioned the one in 2019, and that was I think the longest one in U.S. history. And it's become more and more of sort of a political football. They just want to, blame it. Oh, we're going to shut down. And then one party wants to blame it on the other party. So it's used, I think, more and more as a political football. And I could be alone on this, but I tend to think the whole thing and the fear mongering about it. Oh, it's going to shut down. And what will we do? I think it's a little overblown. I know that there's obviously it's not great, but a lot of people are like, government's too big. Hey, why don't we press pause for a little while? And honestly, last time I think 75% of government spending still continued. You're still going to get Social Security checks, things like that. It's just like a slice of federal workers that probably will get furloughed and stuff like that. So I tend to think it's a little overblown, and a lot of it is, done to sort of, for politics, so the Democrats and Republicans can play the blame game and point fingers at each other.
And 10 seconds real quick on those furloughed employees. Anybody that loses, quote, their job because of a shutdown, they're reimbursed the pay once the shutdown's over. So they're not going to lose any money. Yeah, okay, might it be tough to pay the rent maybe in that next month? Yeah, I'm not discounting that, okay? But they will get the money back. It'll be retroactive or it'll be taken care of, compensated.
I mentioned during the introduction that we are also watching RFK Jr. testify before a Senate Finance Committee here on Thursday. He's facing calls by Democrats on the committee for his resignation, saying that he lied to them during his confirmation hearing about what he would do regarding vaccines if he became the HHS secretary. There is supposed to be an announcement coming up this month at some point by RFK Jr. about autism, and most think that it's going to be related to vaccines. And with all of the upheaval at the CDC last week, Republicans and Democrats have challenged him on his past statements on the COVID vaccine, on what he did at the CDC. How strongly, David, is the White House backing RFK Jr. right now? It seems as though the White House and President Trump, he has their full support.
He does. Maha all the way, according to the Trump administration. Kennedy's in no jeopardy here. As a matter of fact, he came out swinging at the hearing this week. It was very feisty. I mean, Kennedy normally has got, kind of a pretty measured tone overall, but he was fired up because Democrats were coming against him about some of the CDC firings. And, with Kennedy being fired up, plus his voice, obviously, with the, it was intense. It was very intense. And so, look, I think if you look at the polls on this, and John, I'm not going to kind of extrapolate onto exactly where you're at on all this. I think I'm going to go with a traditionalist on maybe the vaccine stuff. I may be wrong. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Fair. But I will say that the majority of Americans are with Kennedy on this. And when I say with him on what exactly, I'm not talking necessarily on autism or this or that. But what I'm saying is the overall feeling that the government hasn't been doing what they should be doing when it comes to preventing medical issues, especially ones that have been around for a while. They haven't been proactive enough. And I think this is a Maha movement that has grown in the suburbs with the parents. I mean, this crosses ideological lines. I think there's just a real concern about some of the lies that RFK Jr. has said is coming from our government, and a lot of parents believing that in the suburbs. And once again, I'm not saying they're not the traditionalists out there. I'm going to get my vaccines and I'm going to do what the playbook says. I get it, and I'm not dissing those people at all. But I think the momentum is with folks that want to see change and are starting to question some of what we've been told for years.
And Dan, I think RFK Jr. is promising some answers and some proof on some of these things. I think that's what everyone's waiting for. I think that's what everyone in Congress is waiting for. There was a good back and forth between Congressman Cassidy, who is, Republican Congressman Cassidy, Senator Cassidy, who was asking him about his praising of Operation Warp Speed, which was, of course, the creation of the COVID vaccine during the Trump administration, and some of Kennedy's litigation against later iterations of the COVID vaccine that came down during the Biden administration. And so a lot of those kinds of back and forths, it hasn't necessarily just been Democrats, it's been Republicans too, who are wanting to see, okay, where's the data, if there is data. And I know Kennedy has said that's what they're looking for. They're looking for data during this whole process. Will he have time to do all that? Will they give him the time to do that?
I think a lot of people hope so, because as David's saying, there's that lack of trust with what the government has said. And, we've gone over this during COVID and the different things that they said that ended up being not the complete truth on things. And so it just leaves people with a sense of, well, what are you not telling us? And it's a contrast now and I think you're seeing a lot of pushback of just, the drug companies kind of had a free rein before, right after COVID, there was a lot of trust given by the government, including Trump early on, saying, hey, get us a vaccine. Like, we got to get past this thing. They told us that would stop the spread. It didn't stop the spread. But the contrast of, think of the Biden administration or even Fauci just going door to door and trying to convince people to take this vaccine rather than just having a recommendation and then you can either take it or leave it. There was an immense social pressure put on a lot of times by the Biden administration, by the government, to you were shamed if you know it's a plague. What did he call it? Not a plague, but he called
a
it
pox.
Something of the unvaccinated. What was a crisis of the unvaccinated or something like that is what Biden said. So basically the public shaming of people who didn't take the vaccine. And it just, at some point, people are starting to say, well, wait a minute, what are you not telling us? And to your point, David, about people, having a distrust of vaccines, I know several people who have children with special needs, and they are 100% convinced, because of the development that was happening with their child completely normal until after certain vaccines were administered, and then things went crazy. You'll never convince them that that didn't have something to do with it. And so and that's just me in my circles. I know a few people like that. And so I would imagine that is all over the place, and at least have the conversation of, well, we're going to look into this. We're going to actually take this seriously. And I think what people have been feeling is that nobody's taking the side effects seriously at all. It's not saying that the vaccine doesn't do anything good, but like, can we be honest about maybe there's some downsides of this thing? Because that's certainly not how it was presented in the public. And the last thing I'll say is that I do think Trump's in a bit of an odd position, because he did, tout Operation Warp Speed and got that out. And that was what all the experts told him at the time was what he had to do in order to get this crisis to be stopped. And so he did it. And now a lot of his base are like vehemently anti and against this vaccine. So it puts him in a bit of a weird spot.
Well, and to the point where he went on, even on Truth, right, in the last week and said, hey, Pfizer's telling me this stuff's great, but is it? He's like questioning his own, the own stuff that he received. I mean, leave it to Trump to kind of be the carnival barker, to just kind of put it out there and let everybody kind of discuss it amongst themselves, so to speak. But John, even as a traditionalist, you can look at the statistics about autism. I mean, there has been a huge, major spike in autism ever, in the X amount of years, decades, when we first started discovering more about autism. So what's behind that? And there's a lot of people that are just like, the vaccines are behind it. Now, can you put it in a test tube and prove it? I mean, I guess for traditionalists, they'll say, well, if you can't put it in a test tube and actually prove it, triple proof it, then, cry me a river. It's not the case. But there's just a lot of skepticism on that. And, and COVID was a great example of just all of this. Look, there were so many people. Okay, let me just say straight up, I don't care, HIPAA violation or not. I don't really care. I didn't get the vaccine. Okay, I've had COVID twice. I've had and one time I was in the ICU. I was in the ICU for a week. Let me rephrase that. I wasn't in the ICU. I was in a special COVID hospital where they had to put me on some sort of breathing tube, if you will, but I wasn't in the ICU, okay? But it was serious enough. And then as I got better, I was asking the nurses around, I said, how are folks around this place? And they were telling me left and right that there were people in the ICU, tons of them, that took the vaccine and they're in the ICU. So, I mean, this idea that only people that are not vaccinated are going to be in trouble was bogus. It's not true. And I know tons of people that were vaccinated and have gotten COVID a whole lot more than someone like myself. I've had it twice in 5 years. So I don't know. We were lied to. We were told that Fauci told us that if we get the vaccine, you got it, dude. Yeah, it'll stop the spread. And come on, John, you have to admit, I'm not trying to argue with you here about it. I don't know where you're at, but we were told initially from Fauci that if you get the vaccine, in essence, you're not going to get COVID. That was original. Now they dialed that back a little bit. Then they said, okay, well, it won't just be as bad. Well, right. that wasn't the case either. So I just want to,
on that claim about it won't be as bad. I always wondered, how do you exactly prove that? Like if someone gets COVID, how can you say, well, it would have been worse? I don't.
Well, the idea here is they were basing some of that knowledge, I think, and again, not a doctor, not a virologist, not a researcher in any way, shape, or form, but basing that on how previous vaccines, how the flu vaccine works. I mean, you do. I've gotten the flu vaccine every year except for one. The one year I didn't get the flu vaccine, got the flu, got it bad. Every year I've gotten the flu vaccine, if I have gotten sick, it hasn't been bad at all. And almost every year I've gotten the flu vaccine, I haven't gotten sick. And I don't know if that's the same, if that's true for lots of other people, most people.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
I would never get the flu vaccine and never get the flu. And then one time I said, I'm going to get the flu vaccine. I got the flu vaccine. I got the flu.
Yeah. So that's my.
So, come on.
Well, it's different for everyone, and I think when you're trying to come up with policy for a nation, I don't think I hear that you guys say that they lied to us, and I think I don't agree with the fact with the statement that they lied to us. I think that I think, I don't know, they were trying to give us information the best they could at the time that they did it. And I will say, too, and even RFK acknowledged this in his hearing today, the initial Operation Warp Speed COVID vaccine was more specifically in line with the actual strain of COVID that we were dealing with right at the start. And I think it's true that it absolutely did help stop the spread of that version of COVID. Now, as the disease mutates and you're trying to catch up with different versions of the vaccine, it did become less effective and you could still get COVID. But there's a reason we were all able to come outside and take off our masks and go to baseball games and all that kind of stuff once everybody got vaccinated that first time around. So I just disagree on that point, especially on the first batch of vaccines when they first came out.
Well, particularly when I say the lies, the one I'm really thinking about is just how they handled the mask stuff at the beginning. Like, I'm sorry, you don't need evolving knowledge on viruses to know what a mask is going to do and what it's not going to do. If you're Anthony Fauci and you're supposed to be the expert on this, you've got to know what types of masks are going to actually.
Right.
And they later said that, well, we just said this so that people wouldn't do a run on the N95 masks and all the health workers wouldn't get it. Well, that's lying to people. Like they were lying about it because it's the benevolent lie, I guess. And they initially told us at the very beginning not to wear masks. So Anthony Fauci knows if we should wear a mask or not. I mean, come on. They were not, I mean, if you want to call it a lie or not, I mean, they certainly were not fully honest with us. And as far as the whole, and listen, I'm also not a doctor, not an expert, but you will be hard pressed to convince me that Fauci did not, and others in the government did not know that the COVID vaccine would not completely stop the spread. I mean, they're the ones doing this. They're the experts on this. Do they just not know what they're doing? And if they don't know what they're doing on that, how can they speak so confidently about what it's going to do then if they don't know? You can't just say, well, it's going to do this. And then, well, we were just kidding. We didn't know. How come you don't come out of the gate then and say, listen, we don't really know what this thing's going to do, but we think it's going to be good? Because So they're not, one way or another, they're not telling you the full truth.
I would rather them just come out and say, listen, I got to be honest with you. We're not sure. We're not sure, but let's be better safe than sorry. Okay. So let's do everything, these cloth diapers, all the stuff. Let's just do everything. Let's shut down schools. Let's shut down churches, not bars, but churches. But
not Walmart.
Not Walmart, but churches. But let's shut down everything because honestly, if I can inject some truth serum into this whole thing, we don't want to be blamed for like a mass, 10 to 20 million Americans being killed on our watch. And I don't want my Wikipedia entry to be that. So, I mean, seriously, if that's the truth serum, that's what's really going on. I'm not saying they weren't coming from a place of trying to protect Americans. I think they were, but I think that they should have at least been honest and say, listen, just to be safe, because we don't really know, we don't know. Knock yourself out. Personally, I think you should stay home like all the time just to be safe. But whatever. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I think we can all agree. And man, this show might become all about this week.
I like it.
But I think the thing that you would see if they were to approach it that way is, I mean, I think we can all agree that shutting down the schools was a terrible idea, that shutting down the economy to the degree that we did was a terrible idea. And of course, the way that they told us to mask initially was certainly not as effective as they were telling us that it was. I personally didn't care about the masks. It didn't bother me. So I don't really care about the masks and all of that nonsense with that I'm not nonsense. I get it. The masks were a major inconvenience, and especially for kids in schools, it was really, really awful. So I get it. And totally totally understand that part of this. But if you tell people like, well, hey, wear a mask if you want to, we think it might do this, but then, people aren't going to do it. And their goal was to try and get as many people to not breathe out into the air and when they first were telling us that COVID was being spread through saliva and through other and through those means, and not that it wasn't airborne. The masks make sense at that point, because the mask is supposed to stop the liquid coming from your face from hitting other people. Now, at what point did they know, okay, it actually is airborne? At what point did they realize it isn't just through direct contact? And that's, I think that's, but I think if you give people like hey, maybe, well, nobody's going to do it at that point.
But they went full throttle in the other direction, and they shamed you and said you were killing grandma if you didn't wear a mask, which was completely not true. And also, if the mask works, it should work for the person who wants to put it on, and then the other person that doesn't want to put it on shouldn't have to put it on. There are still stores, guys, near me that have the dumb plastic barrier like sitting up in front of the, at the checkout, as if the air can't go around the plastic.
Right.
But so to me, I'm sure that there were people that meant well, but I think there were other people that don't. And you'll have a hard time convincing me that at least some people were not pushing this as a giant social experiment to see what they could get populations to do. There are still people in 2025, guys, who I've seen them by themselves outside near no one wearing a mask.
Well, people have been doing weird stuff like that for forever. I mean, that is just, there's a certain small part of the population that is germophobic and doesn't want to. And there's a whole reason surgeons wear masks, right? So that their germs and their viruses and stuff, so that they're not breathing into the open chest cavity of the people that they're working on. Like, there are instances where I think it's been documented masks do protect other people, and the masking.
The good masks, the N95 masks.
Sure,
but the thing they gave us was essentially a cloth rag.
Those were stupid. Those were stupid.
But John,
grant you that.
But that shouldn't be blown off. That's a big part of the argument here. You're saying that was stupid. Well, but you're telling me that Fauci didn't know the cloth masks were stupid? He knew. That's the lie, John. John, that's the lie. Like, in other words, he knew that wasn't going to matter. He knew that he needed to say N95s are the way to go. They eventually got there, but they didn't do it originally. And it was for a while that we didn't hear much about N95s are the way to go.
And you think that was on purpose?
Oh, well, it's not even about on purpose. It was just factually inaccurate. In other words, Fauci knew. You can't tell me that. And if he doesn't know, why is he the head of NIH? But my point is that factually accurate or not, I mean, my point is that you're telling me, John, I mean, here's the question. Are you saying that Fauci didn't know that N95 masks were the way to go rather than these cloth masks? Do you think he really thought cloth masks were the way to go? Come on. There's no way he could have thought that. And if he did, then he should have been fired on the spot. But anyway,
well, I think he didn't admit.
So
I don't know if he has the quote, but I thought he talked about it at one point, saying that they purposely didn't encourage the N95 so that the healthcare workers could get it. It was like the noble lie thing. And I have to go back and look if he actually said that.
If that's true, I haven't seen that.
No.
So it might be, but I never saw that. I haven't seen that Fauci say something that directly that they were.
He might not have. But I've read that.
So here's the whole point, just to bring it back to RFK, which is that RFK is channeling everything in this discussion on Capitol Hill, which is skepticism. That's it.
Well, and that's true. And listen, the skepticism, and this is one of the reasons why we have trouble with experts now, is because the stories change, and you just we don't know who to trust anymore right now. And so that's been a big problem in our society. And we got to get back to that. We got to get back to experts knowing what they're talking about, being trustworthy, and allowing ourselves to trust experts once again. But who knows when that'll happen. I had a lot more for us to talk about here. I'm just going to get to one other thing before we wrap up.
Sure.
I do want to talk about the Jeffrey Epstein rally that took place on Wednesday. You had a bipartisan rally. Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna and Republican Thomas Massie joined Epstein alleged sex assault survivors to gather together in front of the Capitol to urge. They're trying to find 2 more Republican members of Congress to sign on to a discharge release that would allow that would force the Justice Department to release all the files they have with the Epstein investigation. Right now, there are 4 Republicans. You have Massey, Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who are joining all the Democrats on this. Dan, the story went away for a few weeks, but now that Congress is back, the Jeffrey Epstein saga is back. Your thoughts on where things stand right now?
Well, it's interesting that it's not going away, because it seems, just like Trump's casual comments on it, that he kind of wants it to go away. I mean, calling it a fake story that Democrats have sort of conjured up. And if he sticks on that line, the interesting thing to me here is that Trump, I would say, if he stays on that line of calling this not a big deal and it's just a fake story that Democrats have made up, that I think he's misreading his own base on this one. I think they really do care about answers to this. They are convinced that they have not been told the truth on this. They are, the stories are not adding up, as we saw the missing minute get released, and it's not adding up to what the DOJ said. So people are, it's just like throwing fuel onto the fire. They're saying, okay, what is going on here? What is the actual truth here? And so when you have your base believing that, it's going to be interesting to see this play out, because I think, again, I think he's misrating. This is one of the few times, I think, where he's sort of at odds and potentially misreading what his base is looking for.
Yeah, it's a total debacle, or if you're in the Northeast, debacle. But this is totally self-inflicted. Republicans shouldn't even be in this situation, and it all comes from the top. President Trump, Dan, you're absolutely right. He's misreading the base, but it's more than even misreading the base. In Trump, he thinks of it, I'm not calling Trump simplified, but he thinks of it in very simplistic terms. Okay, I've known him now, obviously, for a while. I kind of get a sense of how he thinks. And the way he thinks is, if I can just phrase it like this: this is bad for Trump. This is bad for the agenda. This is bad for what I'm trying to accomplish. And the reason it's bad is because it's taking headlines and ink and attention away from some of what he believes is many good things he's doing. And he said that publicly, and that's what it's true. And if you think about it from that standpoint, it makes sense. I mean, he's right in that sense. Is this a Democrat hoax? Of course, it's not a Democrat hoax. It is a political stunt by Democrats, in the sense that Democrats know darn well they don't give a rip about Epstein. If they cared about Epstein, they would have done something a long time ago. So they don't care about this Epstein thing. What they care about is that it's going to hurt Trump. That's what they care about. But this is on Trump, and this is on Republicans for not owning this situation. They were owning it forever, for like years. And when Donald Trump was not president, when asked about Epstein, he's like, yeah, we got to release everything. We got to get the answers. We got to do, and then womp womp, he becomes president, and then Pam Bondi hands people empty binders, and the rest is history. I believe, and I've said it on this program, Dan Crutchfield, you're out there, you're running this place out there in technical land. Get the tape, cue it up, because when Pam Bondi is fired, or I'm sorry, should I say, served her country honorably, and she'll be gone. And you can cue this tape up right now. I said it a couple months ago. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. It's been that bad. So, having said all of that, let me just simply say that this discharge petition needs 6 Republicans. They're going to get 212 Democrats. They're going to need 6 Republicans to make it 218 to get it to the House floor. Like you said, they have 4 as of Thursday afternoon when we're taping this. I definitely think they're going to get 2 more. And I think it's going to go to the floor. We'll see. We'll see what Mike Johnson has up his sleeve. But can I just say one last thing? And sorry if it's going to tick off the MAGA base, but, well, I'm not sorry. I'm just saying that sarcastically. But let's be clear. If President Trump had said, get to the bottom of this, I want everything released, I want it all out there, I want names and everything, go, 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 guess what? Speaker Mike Johnson and others would say, yes, sir, how high? How high do you want me to jump? Of course they would do that. The whole Republican Party, there wouldn't be a discharge petition, because the Republican Party would say, okay, Mr. Trump, President Trump, you want that? We'll do it. One big, beautiful bill by July 4th. You got it. We'll take care of it. Same thing here with Epstein, but he's done the exact opposite. And because of that, this thing is dragging on, and it shouldn't be.
Well, folks, we'll see what happens over the next week as we reconnoiter next week for another edition of.
Did you say what?
Reconnoiter, regather.
Oh,
gather
thank you.
together
Sorry,
again.
I'm really not that smart, so thank you. Reconnoiter. I was concerned I did something wrong when you said that.
I'm pretty sure that's not a swear word. I'm gonna have to look it up in the Webster's when I get home, when I get done with this. But yeah,
wow,
I'm pretty
reconnoiter.
sure I used
Let me
that
write
word,
that
right?
down.
Yeah.
Reconnoiter.
David Brody, Dan Andros, thanks for joining me on Navigating Trump 2.0 once again.
All right.